All right, so it is 12 o'clock, so we'll get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Don Saucier. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of the Teaching and Learning Center. We have a professional development series that meets every week, Wednesdays at noon. We're so glad that you're here. We got a great event for you today. When you come to enough of our events, you can qualify for a professional development certificate. And my Teaching and Learning Center colleagues, there we go. We drop all that information in the chat. There'll be a post-event survey we hope you'll do after this one. We also have the possibility that you can qualify as a TLC fellow if you're a faculty member, where you kind of not only focus on expanding the excellence of your own teaching, but expanding the excellence of teaching of others. So all the information for that is available at that link. We hope you check it out. I said we get events every week. Our event next week is going to be an event by Angie Brunk from K-State Libraries on accessible teaching. We're really excited for that. But that's next week. And what we got today is amazing. Today, we're going to be having an event about student well-being. And just to kind of provide a little bit of context for how important this is, I have a graduate seminar of very engaged students. They talk a whole bunch. I ask a question. They all want to contribute. Yesterday, I asked, what is one thing you've done this week for self-care? And I got silence. It was really kind of interesting. And it's the first person, after a couple minutes offered something, and then the others still didn't have anything to offer. So I think this is something we need to spend a lot of very dedicated time on. And I'm so grateful that Greg Eiselein and Chris Bowman are here to share with us their thoughts on student well-being. So without further ado, here we go.
I'll take that as my cue. I'll go first. Hey, hello, everybody. Thanks for being here on this fine Wednesday at noon. I know I'm really excited to be here. My name is Chris Bowman. I am the director of the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing. I'm joined by one of our wellbeing advisors here at the center, Shelby Hunt. She's on the call as well. And we are excited to Greg got a hold of us and then got involved with Don to kind of launch our first kind of iteration of what we're calling Wildcat Reset. And I know there was a description that was sent out to the group about what this is, but I'll just touch on it real quick because my goal is to get in and out of here in about 20 minutes. And for those that know me, that is a task and a chore. So I'm going to try to move pretty quickly. But no, Wildcat Reset, what we're kind of looking at wanting to do is we're trying to find ways to introduce well-being to our students in some different avenues and some creative ways. And so talking with Greg, talking with Don, we thought, you know what? Students are coming to class or should be coming to class. How can we develop some what we're calling micro strategies for you all to introduce into your classrooms that can help students' well-being, productivity, optimism, all that kind of good stuff. But I kind of had one criteria with that, and we talked, and we want these to be effective, but they don't have to be something that takes a huge shift in your coursework, in your syllabus, and how to introduce it and things of that nature. That's what we call these micro strategies, right? And so that's where our plan is to have at least four, maybe more, 4 different kind of micro strategies that we can share within the classroom that you can help introduce. And hopefully you'll see the benefit in your students when it comes to their well-being, optimism, productivity, and things of that nature. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and I'm hoping that this works. Okay, can everybody see the walk? Okay, awesome. So the first one that we chose for MicroStrategy for this Wildcat Reset are gratitude practicing. How to practice gratitude and why it's important for well-being and why it's important for like productivity and performance. And we're looking at it in the classroom, but really it can be across all areas. It can be in the classroom, their social life, things of that nature. So with that, I'm going to roll through this pretty quickly. So one of the main goals that we want to do with Wildcat Reset and really in our Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing, where Shelby and I work, is we want to create what we call Wellcats. So kind of first, we got to think about what is a Wellcat. And I'll tell you, my definition and Shelby's definition of a Wellcat is a member of the KSU community that's working towards ways to begin, maintain, or enhance their well-being or start their well-being journey. We want people to be in tune with what well-being is, and we kind of want to inspire them, like it says down there. Our goal as leaders at K-State, your goal as leaders at K-State, our goal as a community should be what we have right there, which is inspire active pursuit of optimal well-being and contribute to your communities and improve the world. That sounds huge, right? Improve the world, like that sounds gigantic. But I think that's what we need to kind of strive towards, is we want to help create what are called these wellcasts, because number one, they're going to do better in our classroom. Number two, they're going to be better community members. And then three, if we really think about it, when they go out into the world and pursue whatever it is they're doing, if they are in touch with their well-being and have an idea of what well-being is, how to maintain it, how to take care of it, maybe some self-awareness of like maybe when it's not at its, where it could be or should be, that's the really important part. Once they get on that community, they're going to represent K-State. They're going to represent us very, very well. So that's kind of the goal with this Wildcat Reset, is we want to create wellcats. So, and I'm going to say throughout this, if anybody has any questions, raise your hand, put it in the chat, however you want to do it, and we'll kind of get to them. I'm going to take questions at the end because I want to roll through this pretty quickly. But again, there's a lot of definitions being thrown around, or we come across a lot of definitions of what is well-being, right? And so here in our office, well-being, we define it as a dynamic state that allows people to pursue their full potential, right? So we're looking at well-being as a state. And I think that's really important for us to kind of understand. But then I think a lot of definitions too with well-being, or some of the definitions I've seen, they mention the word optimal, right? And I think a lot of times when people see the word optimal, they instantly think optimal means operating at 100%, right? If I'm operating optimally, that means I have 100%. But as you can see down there, I'm going to go against and say, optimal well-being doesn't always mean that it is 100%. Optimal may be different on any given days. And I like to use a little bit of a phone analogy for this. We're all pretty well in tune with where our battery life is on our phone, right? Or even our tablet or our laptop. We've been doing a lot of virtual work, and it's highly important that we have an idea, right, of how much energy maybe our electronic devices have. And I'm going to use phone as an example, right? So there may be times your phone can be at 100%. It can be at 1%, right? It's on this continuum, it's on this spectrum. Like I said, the dynamic state, our well-being can be movable, and our optimal well-being can kind of be shifting, and it can move. So I tell people when I use the phone analogy is, we know what percent our phone's at. And I'm going to use 60% as my example, right? We know our phone has 60% battery life. Is that going to affect maybe how we use that phone as a tool, right? Sometimes we have to look at that and we're going to say, my phone has 60%. That means I can do just about anything, right? I can do a Zoom call. I can do a Zoom interview. I can listen to music. I can watch a Netflix movie or something of that nature, right? But let's say my phone energy moves down to like 40% for whatever reason, right? Now it's time for me to start making some decisions, right? Like I got to start maybe prioritizing a few things. Like, listening to music, watching that Netflix movie on my phone, those may become luxury items because I know what I have coming up later in the day. And it may be like I have to go to a class, or I have a Zoom interview, or maybe I'm doing some telehealth type of stuff, right? So now we got to start prioritizing, hey, what can I do? And we all kind of have that gray area. That's what I think is really interesting. For me, if my phone gets below 40%, I'm like, I got to get this thing plugged in and charged, because I want to be ready for just about anything. My partner, she is okay with it being at 40%, and she'll try to do anything, right? Everybody has that different gray area. But with this Wildcat Reset and with this gratitude practices that we're going to be talking about, this may be a way for you to have your students move their well-being and what percent their well-being is at, what their optimal well-being is for that day, maybe from like a 40% to a 60%. So that way they can go out and they can still be engaged and productive and contribute to the community. So I think it's really important for us to understand that well-being is a dynamic state, and also optimal well-being can kind of be dependent on what has happened, what you have going on, and maybe even what you've had going on in the future, in the past, things of that nature. So I think that's really important. So the question, why do we choose gratitude as one of our Wildcat Reset? Why did we choose gratitude practice? I think it's important because gratitude and practicing gratitude and receiving gratitude, it is positively associated with so many positive emotions. Like I said, optimism, life satisfaction. It can reduce some sources of anxiety. It can reduce some depression. It can reduce a lot of things. So that's kind of why we chose gratitude as one of our strategies we want to introduce, and why maybe it was even the first one, because we can introduce some micro strategies. Here's some of the research that goes behind it. And I think if we can help people or our students achieve some of this, like that first one, more grateful people have a better psychological well-being than those who are less grateful. That's going to show up in our coursework. It's going to show up in our university. That's going to show up in our K-State community. And that's a really positive thing, right? That very last bullet, gratitude increases resiliency to trauma and benefits to social relationships, right? I think if we look at the people that are entering higher ed and some of the trauma that some of those people are facing when they come in, anything that we can do, and the research shows with gratitude, anything we can do to help reduce the effects of that trauma or help somebody maybe work through that trauma, which gratitude has been proven to do, is a positive thing. And then also that last bullet there, social relationships, that is fantastic stuff, right? That is what we want. We want people to be connected. We want them to feel like they belong. And social relationships are two of the really, really big proponents of those two things, being connected and feeling like you belong. Okay. So, I think now we're going to get to the actual 3 micro strategies. And what I'll say is this, at the end of this, I'll walk you through and show you where Shelby and I developed a lesson plan of how to implement these into your coursework. So all you have to do is print it off and follow the directions. And at the end of this, I'll show you where to find it and show you what that looks like. But we chose these 3 micro strategies basically for gratitude practices, because they're effective. And again, it's not something that's caused that we have to really, really alter a lot of things. We can work these into our coursework. We can work these into our lives with our students, and we can see results. Like I said, there's research to support this. So the 3 that we chose were the gratitude letter, having 3 gratitudes, gratitude journaling also, and then what we call gratitude experience. And I'm going to just touch briefly on all of these, okay? So then we can keep moving. But the first one we're going to look at is the gratitude letter, right? So the gratitude letter, what we've looked at with the gratitude letter is the research has shown that if we can identify somebody that we are grateful for, somebody that we want to thank, and we can actually write down, and right there it says, describe the things this person has done for you, how the person impacted your life, how they made you feel better. If we can get students to identify somebody, or we get people to identify somebody they're grateful for, and it might be kind of just like icing on the cherry on top. If it's somebody they feel like they haven't said they're thankful for before, or maybe it's someone like they think I need to say this to, if we can get them to write a letter expressing these first 3 things, what that's doing is that's promoting resilience and it's promoting optimism, right? And that 4th bullet there, if we can get students to write these letters, and this is genuine, authentic letters of thanks to people, of gratitude. If we can get people to hand deliver these letters and then read it to the person, what we have shown is what's really interesting is my well-being as a person that wrote the letter goes up, but also the person that I'm communicating with, it also rises and uplifts their well-being and maybe can increase their optimism, right? And so here's some of the research behind that and why it's effective. And that second bullet there, which I find really, really interesting, is they talk about if we can get people to write some of these gratitude letters, write a letter saying thanks to somebody or why they're grateful for them. And then on top of it, get it to go and read it to that person out loud. It can be over the phone, face-to-face is usually the best. It says that it can decrease depressive symptoms for up to 1 month, right? I think that's what's kind of surprising to me is what can seem like almost a simple practice can have some lasting effects for up to 1 month, right? Now, again, I think this is much easier said than done. Writing a gratitude letter and then going out and sharing it with somebody that you're grateful for can be difficult. As the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing, we had a gratitude letter writing event station at the union where people could come. We had postcards, and we said, write a thank you note, basically. Tell somebody why you're grateful for them. Put it in this box and we will mail it to them. We had about 75 students participate in this. And we got some feedback from the students. And one of the most interesting things was that somebody said, one of the students told me was, they said, I don't remember the last time I just wrote a letter with pen and paper to somebody. And they said, outside of maybe a thank you note for a graduation gift or something, they said, I don't know when the last time I just had to think of somebody and write down what I'm grateful for. So then I asked them, like, how do you feel after you did it? And they said, one of them said, amazingly, I feel really energized right now. And so it's like, hey, that's fantastic. It's got a little bit of an old school vintage feel to it, but also it's kind of a way to separate yourself because not a lot of folks handwrite letters anymore. And so that's the key, the handwritten letter. But that's a gratitude letter, okay? The second one that we have are the 3 gratitudes. And this is one that a lot of folks have probably heard about and probably have seen some kind of research literature about the 3 gratitudes. But I think if we can introduce this into the classroom, this could be something that could be helpful. So what the 3 gratitudes are is, you can ask your participants, your class, your students to think about items, people, events that they're grateful for, and then have them just reflect on why they're grateful for that, why that good thing happened, and maybe even how I can have that positive thing keep happening or how I can have those good things keep happening. Sometimes people get a little bit stuck with these 3 gratitudes. I know there's been some feedback from some folks that said, I have a really hard time coming up with 3 things that I'm grateful for. And that can be tough. I admit that. What I say is this, some of the research and that we went through that Shelvin have looked at, if that person maybe gets down 1 thing they're grateful for or 2 things they're grateful for, if they're spending some authentic, genuine time thinking about that 1 thing they're grateful for, it still has benefits. It can still advance and help their well-being. But there on that second bullet, this is for you, and this is in the lesson plan we'll look at, is you can tell people, hey, you know what? Think about an item and then answer the question, what did this item represent that you're grateful for? Think about a person. How did that person encourage you? Or maybe have them think about an event and what about that event brightened their spirits, right? These can be a few prompts that you can ask folks to think about. And if you're going for 3, somebody could write 3 things, 3 items they're grateful for if they answer that question. They could think about a person, 3 people, and write how that encouraged them, or they can just pick one of each one. This may be a good time for you as an instructor to model this behavior and show them, if you're comfortable, how you do your 3 gratitudes, right? What I found is sometimes, to give them a kind of a starting point, it's like, hey, here's how I did it. I picked this item, this person, in this event, and I kind of showed them what I wrote down. And it's kind of important, like I said, if we're all in that authentic, genuine area of thinking about what we're grateful for, the benefits are huge, right? It goes back to this whole, I call it yoga whippy. I thank my 8th grade algebra teacher, Mrs. Winter. Yoga whippy means you only get out what you put in. And so we're asking these folks to put in some effort, right? It's not huge effort, right? By a lot of standards, but we got to say, hey, we got to try to motivate them, put in some effort, and let's be honest with ourselves and see what kind of results we can have. And so the 3 gratitudes, here's a few of the things that the research has found when it comes to the 3 gratitudes. Right there, participants reported fewer illnesses and elevated life satisfaction, right? If they participate in the 3 gratitudes. That's should be what we're working for, right? The elevated life satisfaction. The research shows if I feel good about what I'm doing, if I have purpose, then it's going to open up all kinds of pathways for me to learn, to recall information, to be excited about events or opportunities that come up. So I think, like I said, that right there, that elevated life satisfaction is something I think speaks volumes to what gratitude can do, right? And then also in that second one, I just point out, they did it. One of the studies shows that people that did the 3 gratitudes exercise, that there's higher self-esteem. That's what we're working for. Okay. The next one is the gratitude experience. And this is exciting to me because this is something I don't want to say it's relatively new to me. So the previous two with the gratitude letter and with the 3 gratitudes, what we've done is we've had people reflect on, hey, you know what am I grateful for, and writing it down. But there is a lot of research out there that says we benefit from gratitude the most when we are the recipients of someone telling us that they're grateful for us or saying thank you. Receiving gratitude is one of the best ways to promote well-being, life satisfaction, stress reduction. We need to be the recipients of gratitude. Myself receiving gratitude, I can have so many benefits. Now that can be difficult, right? Because we don't want to have to sit around and wait for someone to come and tell us, hey, I'm grateful for this, Chris, because of this. We may be waiting a while, or maybe we're just waiting around for someone to come and read us a gratitude letter, right? So Shelby and I, we looked at some of the research, and there is a way for us to invoke that same feeling of receiving gratitude by watching others, okay? And so the strategy that we're gonna give you on this lesson plan is, we actually picked out 4 videos that you'll have access to. And what those videos show is it shows people giving gratitude or giving thanks to somebody else, right? And so we can watch those, and then we have those 3 questions. You have your students answer those 3 questions after the videos. They need to identify the struggle, and writing these down is important. Identify the struggle, describe the help that was offered and received, and then have them just write about their emotions. How did that event impact you, right? What's really cool is through some of the research, that first bullet that says emotional states can be transferred to others, leading them to experience the same emotions as those around them. That's called the emotional contagion. That is fantastic, right? So what it's saying there is that I can experience the same emotional state of gratitude by watching somebody receive gratitude, right? And so I think it's just fantastic that we can, so we don't have to have people wait around to receive that gratitude. Now, if you introduce the gratitude letter writing, hey, like I said, that's where you're doubling up. The person writing it's getting the benefit, and then the person they're reading it to or sending to is also getting benefit because they're receiving gratitude. And so I'm going to keep on moving here. Here is a lesson plan. I think Shelby's going to copy and paste this web link into the chat for you to access. But I'm going to go to and show you. So on our website at Lafine Health Center, again, you go to the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing. Here is what it looks like. It explains a gratitude practice, and then we have our lesson plan. Can everybody see the lesson plan that just came up? Okay, so this is for you. This is for you to print off. And what it is it's kind of a step-by-step on how to introduce these. And it kind of sums up everything we've talked about. It has the 3 strategies. When you get down to that very bottom one where it says the gratitude experience, and there's a QR code, let's say you print this off right now and you put it on your desk. If you scan that QR code, what it does is it takes you back to this page, okay? But where it says gratitude experience videos, if you click that, these are the 4 videos that we've identified, that we found, that you can show your class. And then what we want them to do is we want them to reflect on those 3 questions. You know, what was the struggle? How did I feel emotionally to it? And what help was offered? Okay. Are we back to the gratitude practice, the PowerPoint? Okay, I'm just making sure. Y'all, that was quick. That was fast. You know, I want to keep this pretty short. These are micro strategies. But that's what Shelby and I came up with. And if we can introduce these into our classroom, get people practicing some gratitude and some gratefulness, what it does is it increases optimism, it can increase performance, and it can really enhance resiliency, which we all need. We don't know when we'll need it, but we need that ability to bounce back. And so there's our email address, Wildcat Wellbeing. If you have any questions, what I can do, Greg, too, or whoever wants, how we can do it, I can email out the web link and all that kind of good stuff. That way people have access to it. But I think if we can work this into our classroom, into the classrooms and into some of these environments, it can have some pretty impactful benefits for us as, you know, people working with students, but also for students as well. So I'm going to hit stop share. and I have not even once looked at the chat. So anyway, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Greg, I know I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of take over.
Well, yeah, let's do this together. I was really excited when Chris and Don and the group that did this came together to come up with this. And one of our big concerns, our major concern, of course, is student wellness and well-being. And for us, it's at the core, it's at the obvious core of learning. The research on this issue is pretty clear that anxious and oppressed students don't always do as well as they could have done. They're not reaching their full potential, and it interferes with learning. And what are the things that we can do to improve student wellness, student well-being, to improve learning? So I know that student life and student success people have known this forever, and they tell us all the time, but I think all of us need to recognize how important it is to our core mission of student learning. But we're also, I'm interested as well in faculty and staff well-being. And could we start to do faculty and staff development in ways that promoted faculty and staff well-being as well? So that's part of the underlying strategy here with the focusing on Wildcat Reset and these micro strategies. We want to give you something practical that you could use tomorrow if you wanted, but also something that doesn't, to use Chris's metaphor, drain your battery. Something you could do in 24 minutes rather than having to do a 2-day retreat where you leave and you go home and you're exhausted from, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a 2-day retreat, but it takes more out of you than a short thing. Another kind of proven, well-being strategy or happiness strategy is what they call the gift of time. If you tell somebody that, yeah, hey, come to this 1-hour meeting, and you find out it's only going to be 29 minutes, and you get a free half hour, people like that. People like that. And so what I want to tell you now is Chris and Dawn and some others of us are going to stay around, and we're going to chat with Chris about what he just shared. And we're going to debrief in general for about 15 minutes. So we're not going to even use this full hour for those who stay, and talk about this microstrategy and microstrategies for the future. But if you're like stoked that you got, like, hey, I learned 3 gratitude strategies, this is just what I needed, and you want a free half hour, I want to say thank you for coming today, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to pause in case anybody wants to go with our blessing. For those who want to stay, we're gonna debrief a little bit, but still be done before the usual amount of time. So the idea here was to do this in a shorter rather than a longer amount of time. Thank you, Heather. See you, friends.
Thank you, Greg, Chris. Wonderful, wonderful.
So I think there are 2 things to talk about. One, I know that folks will have questions for Chris and ideas or feedback, or I tried this, and so I want to talk a little bit about what Chris presented today. And then I'd also love to get your feedback about doing something like this again in the future, where maybe we get together for 20 minutes, somebody introduces a microstrategy to promote student learning through the promotion of student, faculty, staff well-being, and some ideas of what we might do in the future. So I'll just start with reactions, responses to Chris's, yeah, I'm sorry, Hayden, if we lost the chance to do some announcements. We'll do announcement. I'll turn this back over to all of you before we're done, but let's just start. Reactions to Chris's gratitude practice. I know that some people were talking about it in the chat. Questions, thoughts?
So Greg, one of the things that a couple of us are talking about in the chat is how intimidating this could be. And I know that you were engaged in that part of it too, is that it's not often that we necessarily kind of reach out in any formal way to let people know that we're grateful for things they've done, definitely not in person. So I'm wondering about any advice y'all have about not making this more stressful, right? Because what we're trying to do is actually alleviate anxiety and stress. And I'm worried that for some of us, it might actually increase before it alleviates.
That's a great question.
I'll say, Don, and I think Shelby might have put this in the chat, so Shelby, chime in if you want to. Even just writing something and sending to somebody increases that whole well-being and create optimism. And there's nothing saying that you have to go from 0 to 100, right? To where it's one of those where, let's say I want to send Greg something to tell him how much he's helped me professionally. Maybe I don't feel like I've thanked him enough. It can be intimidating to say, I need to write this really heartfelt letter and then read it to him, because that can be really, really difficult, and it can be small steps to take to get to that. There's nothing saying that I have to write it and then read it to Greg. I can kind of find my way, and you can find a little bit of your comfort area. So I could write a thank you note to Greg and send it to him. That's still going to boost my well-being. My optimism was what I go with, and Greg's as well. So you can work up to that point to where it is calling and reading, because I don't know about you all, and I think I saw you had it, Don. In my email box, I have a kudos file. And so if somebody sends me, and I also have like just a shoebox full of thank you cards as well, or notes, but keeping those, like my kudos file in my email, if someone shares with me that I did something well for them, or they liked what I did, or thanks me, I put it in a kudos file, and I can open, and I really encourage everybody to have one of these. There may be days where my battery level may be at 20%, or I'm having a rough day. I can open that up and kind of give myself some affirmations, like I am doing great things. People are appreciative, and things of that nature. The part that I put too with the battery analogy I used is, the part that we want to be careful for is if our battery is constantly at 20% for long periods of times, that's maybe when, hey, maybe we need to start looking at trying to, this true self-assessment. But maybe some of the self-help stuff, maybe I need some outside help. Maybe I need someone to help me process this as well. So paying attention to that length, because we can all have things happen that kind of throw us off our game as well. So anyway, I'm going to be quiet now, or try to. No promises.
Chris, I'm actually going to follow up, so you won't be quiet for very long. So I'm also wondering about the other side to it. So if you are the recipient, how do you respond? Because I've gotten these messages, I've gotten cards, and I don't always know that my response is going to be at the same level of the original, kind of thank you statement. So I don't always know, especially in the moment, how to respond. I wonder if you had any kind of tips for that.
All this is difficult, or some of this can be difficult, and it takes practice. But just genuinely taking that thanks and saying, I really appreciate that. And I know myself, if somebody says that to me, there's always sometimes this tendency to be like, oh, and now if you have a team that's helped you, please include them. But, I always want to say, well, it was just, that was all Shelby, it wasn't me. Maybe just saying thank you. And then you take that and process a little bit and think about, man, and take some inventory about how you felt when they said that. But generally just saying, honestly, just saying thanks for that. And I appreciate somebody noticing. That's acknowledging it, but then also gives you some time to reflect. And that, you're exactly right, Don. There's that whole thing like, oh no, I got this awesome letter from somebody. I need to top it, or I need to do something just better. And you get into this like back and forth about who could write the most heartfelt. That's not what we want to see. Just acknowledging, saying, thank you. I really appreciate someone has noticed. That is a very powerful response as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I wanted to add that what I really liked about the idea of asking a student to read a letter to somebody in person, even, and no pressure to do it, but if they stand in front of a safe person that they have a relationship with and say something kind, and they say something kind back, imagine, and it's a little fearful and they're a little scared, how far that goes in speech class when they have to stand in front of strangers and say something that's not as rehearsed or heartfelt. And so the number of students that report having so much anxiety about giving presentations and speeches because they just never do that. And that's such a great practice. of just listening, hearing them out, and encouraging them to go do that and get out of their comfort zone from time to time in a safer spot. And also then you having the opportunity to just model the reaction. How do you do that? You know, you wouldn't know if you've never done it before. And so I really like it as a learning experience, even though it is scary, because it's just tiny bits of scary. And that helps them when it's big scary later on.
I would say there's a great transition that I've experienced in different organizations. For instance, I'm part of a sorority, and in African American community, our sororities continue as grad chapters as opposed to collegiate chapters. And we do something that at first I wasn't very comfortable with when I became a member, and that is that we kind of have gratitude days, and we all will write a note, and then that note is written to each one of our members. We each write a note to each one of our members of something we are grateful or appreciative about that person or about their personality. And then we hand them all out. We don't put our names on them. We don't have to. So you get bombarded, all this wonderful love, so to speak, that you don't know which one of your sorority sisters said that, but it makes us all feel warm and fuzzy, especially if we've had a contentious meeting, you know, and you don't want to leave feeling like, you know, you get a chance to sort of feel warm and fuzzy when you leave. So perhaps a transition to reading something out loud is to just write it and give it if it's uncomfortable.
Can I ask a question, LaBarba? If doing it as a group, knowing that others are doing it, did that make it, I want it easier or more encouraging for you to do it? Because sometimes I feel like doing it with a group, like you said, with your sorority sisters or whatever, whoever it is, knowing others are doing it kind of takes a little bit of the silliness factor, for a lack of better words, out of it. Did you find that?
Sure, but I think one of the issues is, again, it's not a competition. And you sort of have to get over the fact that, oh, I'm trying to say something so profound. And I'm a thinker, and I'm a person who likes to be very, very genuine. So some of my sorority sisters are done, and I'm still trying to write something wonderful, thoughtful as well to each one of them. So I don't like the pressure of like, get it done quickly, you know. So yeah, it can be easier because we're all doing that. I'll give you another example that was much more personal. My mother and I had a little bit of a misunderstanding. And one of the things that my counselor said a long time ago was, you know, write your mother a letter. Don't just tell her, because when she gets sad or thinks about whatever it is that was an issue, she can pull out that letter and read it again and again and feel good. So I found, and I unfortunately didn't get to do that. She passed away before I finished the letter, but I was fortunate enough to spend time with her in the hospital telling her. So, you know, sometimes you just have to get it in when you can get it in. But I'm very much interested in how we as faculty treat each other, and how we can especially say positive things to our department heads and our deans, because they work hard for us. And I've made it a practice now to always compliment, genuinely care about the work that they do for their faculty. That is really, really important to me. And I've seen a difference in their attitude with me as a person of color, because when something comes up, you know, and people always say, oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. But when you spend a little bit more time saying something genuinely from the heart, and they see no matter how they might have treated you, you treat them kind and human, there is a definite response. There's a different response. And I've seen that over the years.
That's a great point. I mean, I agree. I think like, oh, poor department heads, like they're hearing negative news left and right, up and down, and for them to get some kind of positive feedback, or I notice what you're doing and I appreciate it. They don't get a lot of that, I don't think. I think they get a lot of like, hey, what about this problem? How come you haven't fixed this yet? But you made me, all of you made me think, Mariah knows this. We do a thing at K-State First. We haven't done it for a while, but it's called Circle of Affirmation. And it's a way of expressing gratitude and giving folks positive feedback. And all the teachers here know that positive feedback, just like constructive feedback, both are really, really important in the learning process. But there is a kind of wellness and gratitude benefit. I think there is with constructive feedback as well. I think when students, for example, feel seen, and that even if it doesn't have to be critical or positive. It's just when you tell them, this is what you did, I think that presence has a positive benefit for their well-being as well. But my point is just that for some of these things, Circle of Affirmation or the gratitude letter, my guess is that some of you will be able to take what Chris has prepared and just go use it, which is terrific. And others of you are going to have to personalize it for your classroom, your situation, and that's cool, right? That there's no way, Mary, there's no way I'm getting the English 645 class to write gratitude letters tomorrow, right? But that doesn't mean isn't some way I couldn't, work in 3 gratitudes or do gratitude experience. And so you creative teachers, if you feel inspired by a microstrategy, make it your own. I'm going to try to give the gift of time, even to those of you who were gracious enough to stay behind and debrief with us. But I do have a question before we go, and then I'll turn it back over to Don and his team. But do you want to do this again? Do you like this kind of 25 minutes? Here's something you can do in your classroom that will improve student learning and student well-being. You can do if you like it, you can do this, or you can do this. Is my favorite, the heart. If you really loved it, you could do that. Or you could do rainbows. Mariah's doing rainbows. Okay. Chris is a professional, right? But you are professionals as well. If you're interested in and have an idea, feel free to reach out to Dawn or to me or to Chris and say, hey, I'd like to share this microstrategy with a group someday, and we'll figure out how to make that happen. Does that sound good? Also, if you have ideas, like, I want somebody to teach me this and I have no idea how to do it, we'll take suggestions and maybe go find somebody who can. Other kind of responses, reactions to today's microstrategy workshop?
Greg, I would say one thing that I have found and my colleagues have found is that these strategies that you're talking about, especially when you identify a student who's struggling in a class, is to have time to give them some gratitude, to show them things that they're doing really, really well. Maybe it's not showing up in the way in which you grade, but to point out their strengths and to encourage them. And I've been doing that with a couple of students in studios over the last couple of years when no one else really supported them. And they've really blossomed. And I think it takes time to figure that out, what it is intrinsically in that person that makes a difference. But I'm finding that if we take the time with some of our students individually to give that point of gratitude or encouragement in that way, that they do respond to that.
LaBarbara, that's so on point. In a different context, I was in a conversation with a group of adults about a moment, and the question was just that, can you remember a moment in your life when somebody was kind to you? We were talking about what is kindness? How do you define it? What is it about? And the number of people who told these stories, it was about teachers, that this teacher took me aside and they said this one tiny little thing that they didn't need to say, that made me feel really good. And it was a pattern. And it just reminded me that those little things you say in class, like sometimes they impact students powerfully. So, and it doesn't take much from the teacher, right? It takes that moment of being present and just saying, hey, Ashley's really good at this. Tell her, Dawn, and it'll stick with her. And it, as a teacher, it reminds that student to keep doing that thing that they've just learned because it works well. Yeah. Thank you, LaBarbara.
It can also work the other way. You can give someone very harsh words, and believe it or not, as they mature and graduate, they may come back and send you that nice letter saying, I remember when you treated me this way, or you told me this, and I decided to change. So it can work both ways.
I'm going to turn it back over to Don and his team to close us out.
So I first want to begin by thanking Chris and Greg for such a uplifting workshop. This is kind of what I needed today. It's a gray day, it's cold outside, and the semester's getting long, so this was awesome. I do want to say that Greg was talking about, if you ever want to learn some stuff, this is what the professional development series is about. So every Wednesday at noon, we've got more stuff to kind of offer you. We're always looking for new presenters. We're always looking for new ideas. So if you have stuff, please send them our way. We have a professional development certificate you can earn. There's a post-event survey we'd love you to take on this one to let us know how that went. My colleagues are dropping that into the chat. Next week, Andy Brunk from K-State Libraries is going to be talking to us about accessible teaching. And then my final announcement, this is what I've made before, but we're really excited about it. First ever TLC Sodal Showcase will be during finals week. It'll be Monday afternoon then. And we have the opportunity for you to submit for either poster presentations or oral presentations to share your scholarship of teaching and learning with the rest of the campus. So if you got a project, an idea, a concept, we would love to hear about it. So the information has just been dropped in the chat. If you have questions about that, please let us know. The submission deadline for that is Monday, April 11th. I think it's a week and a half ish from today. But if you have questions, please let us know. And thank you as always for joining us today. Thank you one more time, Greg and Chris, for such a wonderful presentation.